Hello, everybody. I'm Rex Sikes, and welcome to All Things Rex Worldwide because it's another Thursday, and you're here with me and my fabulous guests. I've got two guests today. Dr. Bernie Siegel, MD, is a New York Times best-selling author of 19 books. He's a retired pediatric surgeon and founder of Exceptional Cancer Patients, otherwise known as ECAP. For many, Bernie needs no introduction at all. He has touched many lives over the planet, all over the planet, and in 1978, he began talking about patient empowerment and the choice to live fully and die in peace. As a physician, he's cared for and counseled innumerable people whose mortality had been threatened by illness. Bernie embraces a philosophy of living and dying that stands at the forefront of the medical ethics and spiritual issues our society grapples with today. He continues to assist in the breaking of new ground in the field of healing and personally struggling to live the message of kindness and love. He's been named one of the top 20 spiritually influential living people on the planet by the Watkins Review, and he can be contacted through his website where you can read more about him at berniesiegelmd.com. We'll scroll that later on the banner. And Charlie Siegel is Bernie's grandson. He's the best-selling author of spiritual fiction novel and a book of poetry he co-authored with Bernie. He enjoys writing and sharing inspiration through his fiction works, and he's currently working on several more books. He's also a professional fine art, nature, and wildlife photographer, sharing the healing beauty of nature with photographs from scenic sites around the world. His works also are available, and we'll scroll that too, at naturephotoBySC.com, and that will scroll. There's more, but I'm going to ask my guests to tell us about that in just a moment when I bring them on. So I hope you will help me welcome uh, Dr. Bernie Siegel and Charlie.
Thank you. I have to a quick comment. We're more like identical twins. I mean, Charlie is into nature and beauty. I'm an artist, and nature has been, well, it's my way of connecting with God. And it just, and then we were writing emails to each other and sending poetry incidentally. And then we ended up putting a book together of our poetry. I mean, I didn't know he wrote any, he didn't know I wrote any, but there are so many things that we share. It's just a pleasure to be with him.
Absolutely.
So that was Bernie, obviously, and this is Charlie.
Thanks for having us.
And on top of that, your mom, right, Charlie? It's your mom that has a
Yep.
store?
Yeah. I'm actually in the back of that store now. And my mom started Wisdom of the Ages in Connecticut when I was 3. So that's a whole part of like what I do now is that I've grown up with like meditation, just wanting to help people and live in a spiritual way. And that's kind of been my route through working with her and being part of the store and everything, classes and stuff. That then when Grandpa Bernie and I were sharing, like, hey, these are some of our things we've written and thoughts we've had and stuff, like, wow, they really connect in an interesting kind of way.
Yeah, I used to run a support group at their store.
Yeah.
But then, it just got hard to keep driving there, and keeping it up. But it was a pleasure to be in there. I mean, it's a healing place.
Well, and you both are responsible for so much healing worldwide in your works and your writings and the things that you do in your photography, and as you said at the center. By the way, our numbers of live viewers are growing. So what I'd like to do is remind the viewers that they can like the show. They can share the show right now while they're watching, so that others can join us as well, both live or in replay. But you can also, while we're live, ask questions of Dr. Bernie and of Charlie and leave comments. So I invite you to do that and welcome everyone.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Dr. Siegel, you began back in your bio essentially in 1978, trying to help people understand that patients could live a different kind of life than
Let
how
me give
they
you a
travel.
quote, because that's what changed my life from a patient. I went to a meeting run by a physician for ways to help cancer patients. And I show up and 150 people are there and I'm the only doctor. That blew my mind, that not one doctor in Connecticut is interested in coming to learn how to help cancer patients. And sitting next to me were my patients, which I learned was quite a compliment. They didn't run to the other side of the room. And one young woman, when I said to her, "Why are you here? What did you come to learn?" She said, "You're a nice guy. I feel better when I'm in the office with you, but I can't take you home with me. So I need to know how to live between office visits." That sentence changed my entire life. Well, I changed my life because of that sentence. I went back to the office, and what was fascinating, my partner, who's sort of mystical too, looked at me and said, "You're gone." I said, "What are you talking about? I'm gone." He said, "You're not the same person you were on Friday before the weekend workshop." That blew my mind. He saw a different person, and he was right. In less than 10 years, I retired from surgery. And these are the things that impressed me. But what I saw was when you started support groups and helped people live, they didn't die when they were supposed to. I mean, when you call up to ask the family why you weren't invited to the funeral, and the fellow you thought was dead answers the phone, he moved to Colorado. And he said, "Oh, it's so beautiful here, I forgot to die." And I began to realize they all had stories. It could be a lawyer who wanted to be a violinist, but his parents wouldn't let him. So he gets cancer. He starts playing his violin and gets a job in an orchestra, and he isn't dead. And I can go on telling stories, but that was the important part. And people often would refuse treatment and say, "No, oh, my landscaper friend, I'm going to go and make the world beautiful. So I'll leave a beautiful world." Well, 6 years later, he was in the office. I said to the nurse, "Don't hand me his chart. He's dead." She said, "Open the door." So I opened the door, and there sat John. "Hi, I have a hernia from lifting boulders in my landscape business." So he became my therapist. See, you talk about Charlie. He was a landscaper. I spent loads of time outdoors with him and saw how beautiful things were that I had never noticed before. And that's something I'd say to people: when you go for a walk outside, look at the little things too. It's amazing what you see.
I love this, and what's so important is that let me give you a little bit of a backstory. I'm in Australia. I'm doing a bunch of training. Everybody wants to teach me, something or show me their wares, and some doctor starts looking at me and notices that my hands are a little like orange, and goes, "Wow, you could have hepatitis." And my first thought is, I didn't come to Australia to get hepatitis. And he said, "Don't have any alcohol, don't have any meat. I'll look at you tomorrow," and everything else. And I was like, "What?" Well, on the way home, I drank some carrot juice because I drink a lot of carrot juice, and the next day I didn't have any of the carotene.
Hmm.
So he said, "Let me check you out." And he goes, "Well, what happened?" I said, "It's carrot juice." I mean, I was a little
Right.
indignant too. I'm like, you should never diagnose out loud. So my question is this: so many people, when they get a diagnosis, they suddenly own that diagnosis. It's either it's a sentence or a limitation, or it's hypnotic, as we've talked about. So what you have done in your work is to help people come out of that trance and live a more productive. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
People are not statistics, you know? So to say that you have so many, this is your odds. I mean, I know doctors who've killed people and insurance companies. I don't make up any of these stories. You have cancer of the lung, you develop cataracts. What does your insurance company say? "We will not pay for cataract surgery. You're going to be dead in 6 months, so you can live with cataracts for 6 months." He went home, laid down on his bed, and died in 5 days. So, yeah, we sued the insurance company. And that's the part I learned, that you can give people hope. It's physiologic, it's real. Monday morning, we have more heart attacks, strokes, suicides, and illnesses. Your feelings, your emotions. So when somebody has hope, their immune function goes up and stress hormone levels go down. When you're depressed, fearful, the opposite happens. So every time somebody doesn't die when they're supposed to, just ask them, what did you do? And let me say this. See, doctors don't ask you, what did you do? I mean, some psychiatrists do, but not the, standard traditional doctor. They don't say, how come you didn't die? And I even had some saying that I was nuts. The controversial was the word everybody talked about me. Oh, the controversial Dr. Siegel. He says if you join his groups, you can live longer. That's baloney. I'm going to start some groups and prove it doesn't work. Well, he started 2 groups. One where he met with the women, talked about life. The other where they just left them alone. There were no meetings. And guess what? At the end of the year, more people who were in the group that came together and shared feelings, emotions, were alive. So he became a supporter then, instead of criticizing me, and started running groups. It's called an immune competent personality. And yeah, we're all going to die someday. So I don't try to not die. I try to enjoy living. Then my body knows I'm living and keeps me alive as long as it can. And if you laugh for no reason, that was another study. You laugh for no reason every 3 hours. Those who laughed for no reason had a better survival rate than those who just laughed if something funny happened.
I quote a Travis Air Force Base study that was conducted with 157 cancer patients, and that said that attitude is the number one predictor for the success of the treatment in health and healing.
Well, let me say this. How you feel about the treatment is a big part of it. See, you don't want a COVID vaccine. Oh, no, you can have a reaction to it. Oh, go get it, and you'll have all kinds of trouble. And then you can tell people, see, I told you, look what happened. I have all these shots. I expect no problems at all, and I never have any. And that's why I lied to children. I take an alcohol sponge, say, boy, are you lucky. Why? You're going to stick me with a needle. Yeah, but this is a new sponge. It numbs your skin as well as cleaning it, so you won't feel the needle. And then I'd rub them with an alcohol sponge, and they'd look up, oh, why don't the other doctors do that? I was their favorite doctor now, see? And it was a lie, but it worked beautifully. So nobody's upset with it.
Well, there are.
I get my blood drawn. I tell the woman or man who's drawing the blood, I say, make sure you do this with your patients and watch what happens. And they get such a kick out of it the next time I come in for blood tests that it has worked. And so many of their, clients are so happy now.
I want to bring Charlie on too in a second, so to ask, because you're both involved in inspiring people, helping them to live more fully, to explore these areas of the mysteries of life, the mysteries of our own spirituality or physicality.
Let me say one thing. Sure. Maybe Charlie can bring that up in his life too. What I love asking people is when they say, oh, I have cancer. Oh, I'm getting a divorce. Oh, I lost my job. What are you experiencing? Give me a word that describes what you're going through. And when they come up with the word, be it pressure, failure, roadblock, I say, what else in your life fits that word? So in a sense, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but one lady in the emergency room said pressure. So I did a meditation with her about relieving the pressure in her life. She had severe migraines for a week. Nurse came over to me 15 minutes later and said, it's her marriage. Her headache's gone. She's going home to straighten out her marriage.
That's cool.
That impressed me. The one that really touched me was the woman said failure. I said, how does that fit your life? Well, my body has cancer. It failed me. I said, that's not my question. Oh, My parents committed suicide when I was a child. I must have been a failure as a child. Yeah. And, it's hard for me to stop talking. The other thing is all the violence in the world. If we loved our children, you wouldn't worry who has a gun. I walked up to, and I've walked up to a lot of violent people, walked up to a kid who was screaming and cursing in the car behind mine. And I said to a cop at the corner, tell him to be quiet. And I couldn't believe the cop. That's not my job. I get out of the car with all our kids screaming he could have a gun, and he could have. I walked over to his car. It was summertime. The window was half down. I said, I want to tell you something. I love you. I'm sorry your parents don't. What do you think he did?
Cried?
No, he shut up completely, made a U-turn, and drove away.
Wow.
And I'm sure he went home to talk to his parents, because if a stranger could walk up and say, I'm sorry your parents don't love you, he knows something about what he needs is love.
Wow.
Yeah. And many years ago, you know what's going on with Trump now? I wrote to USA Today. I said, if people want to deal with Donald Trump, when you meet him, just say, Donald, I love you. He won't know what to do with you. And they published it. And look at what's going on now. If we would just say to him, we love you, he won't know what to say. He's had a fight, Yeah, it's what his parents did to him. We want you to be rich, famous. Yeah. It wasn't, we want you to do good things. We want you to be famous. Yeah.
So to invite Charlie in and to follow what you were just sharing, um, I think there's a whole lot to be made for you don't ever get peace by hating or by being warlike. You have to get peace by being peaceful and loving and compassionate and kind and generous. You have to look at what you want, not at what you don't want. And for our leaders, whether they're religious or political or your family or your friends or your children or your parents, to shower them with love and peace and compassion as opposed to what we were talking about before. Instead of looking at the symptom and of what's going on and then or the expectation that I'm going to live out this diagnosis, I think we oftentimes help imprison people in the way they live their lives by how we hold them in our thoughts and in our hearts, as opposed to thinking or expecting, the Pygmalion effect or the Rosenthal, the idea that people will rise to the level of your expectation or sink to it.
Yeah, one of my quotes from one of my poems that I have it on stickers and stuff. My candle burns not to dispel the darkness, but to put forth the light. That's kind of my idea of what we were talking about. That like putting out light and goodness and loving people just for the fact of doing that, not to combat something else. It's just for doing the good, and then it's like lighting a candle in a room. It's an automatic fix that way.
Charlie, that's perfect. Because one day our 5 children were fighting in the kitchen. And I came in and I yelled, you may choose peace or you may choose conflict. And our daughter, Carolyn, due to German measles that my wife was exposed to in pregnancy, has a hearing impairment. So I say, you may choose peace or you may choose conflict. And Carolyn yells, I'll have pizza. And the whole room, all the kids bust out laughing, and the fight ended. And so from then on, that was my way of stopping fights. You may have pizza. And everybody would laugh and stop fighting.
That's good.
Thank God she couldn't hear correctly because it did a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that kind of goes along with the title of our book we did together. I have here with me, when you realize how perfect everything is.
Right.
we picked that for the title from, it's an anonymous quote: "When you realize how perfect everything is, you'll tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." When I was going through our poetry and putting the book together, I found that's kind of that like overarching message of a lot of what we've written, is that those kind of like difficulties and conflicts and things in life, or like maybe not hearing something correctly, seems like something that's not perfect, that seems like the issue, but it might be how things work out. Um, it's like actually the picture that this is one of my photographs, and a bunch of my pictures illustrate our book here. But the hawk looking over the mountain landscape, it's that idea that those hills and everything we have to work through in life seems like those imperfections, but it's really what like makes you who you
Yeah.
are. It's working through those challenges and experiences like creates you. So it turns out it is perfect. It's making you who you are.
That's
That
why
is,
Charlie, I'm in awe of him. Years ago when we started communicating via emails. I mean, it's like he's an old man in a young man's body, if you know what I mean, the wisdom. It just, and if we bring up our kids that way, I grew up with 3 rules. Ma, I had a horrible day at school today. What would my mother say? God is redirecting you. Something good will come of this. That used to drive me nuts. Ma, did you hear what I said? I had a horrible day. Yes, God is redirecting you. The other, what should I do? I got choices to make. Like we were talking about careers and people changing their mind when they get a life threatening illness. My parents would answer, do what makes you happy. And that's what I found from cancer patients, and AIDS patients. How many of them put a poster on their refrigerator with magnets? Let your heart make up your mind. Yeah. And, those are the things that just make a difference in your life. You have to remember that. So I forgot what the third thing I was going to. Oh, yeah. My father's father died when he was a child, leaving 6 kids and a wife with nothing, of tuberculosis. And I heard my father say once when he was being interviewed, one of the best things that happened to me was my father dying when I was 12 years old. When he was alone, I went over. I said, Dad, what are you talking about? You went through hell. He said, yeah, but it taught me what was important about life. We're all here to help other people. And those genes are in me. It's hard for me to sue somebody when I lend them money that they tell me they'll give me back in 6 weeks. And 3 years later, I haven't heard from them. But it's like I hear my father saying, yeah, but you helped his life. So you don't have to take him to court.
well, that's very beautiful. I want to point out that what's scrolling right now is the wisdom of the ages .biz, which is where they can get your books and many of the items that you have for sale.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep. You can. All of our books are like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all that. But if you want to get autographed copies or like get them right from me, you can go on wisdomoftheages.biz. There's a contact part where you can just tell me what you'd like to get, and I can do an order like over emails or on the phone or anything with social media too. You can contact us and get like autographed personal stuff that way.
Fantastic, fantastic. And also I want to remind our viewers who are watching live right now that they can ask questions of both of you, and they can, as you can see, comment, and but also share and like it. And I really appreciate all the viewers for being here. And you know, Dr. Siegel and Shirley, but Dr. Siegel, your work, when I quoted the Travis Air Force Base, I mean, you've been involved in so many different kinds of breakthrough realizations when it comes to health and healing and studies and actually forwarding the idea that life is to be lived. Yes, you'll die, as you said earlier, but to live fully while you're doing that.
Right.
And
And the other thing I remembered, that you learn from the people what to pass on to others. Solzhenitsyn, in his book Cancer Ward, has an incredible term. See, most doctors, you get well when you're not supposed to. What do they call it? you had a spontaneous remission. And they don't say to the patient, how come you didn't die? You're lucky. Well, Solzhenitsyn, who had cancer in his lifetime, wrote, one of the men says, oh, I found this book in the hospital library. It says here there are cases of self-induced healing, not recovery through treatment, but actual healing. See? And it was as though a rainbow-colored butterfly flooded out of the great open book, and they all held up their faces for its healing touch as it flew past. Think of that term, self-induced healing. Now, why a rainbow-colored butterfly? Because the symbol is you have your life in order now, a rainbow. Why a butterfly? Because you busted out of the cocoon and became the butterfly. You went through a struggle, but you, in a sense, rebirthed yourself. And that's what doctors never seem to wake up to help patients create that new self and live on. And when I read that, just reading the book, I didn't know it was in there. It was like, wow. And that's why I love finding sentences in certain books from many people where I know they're telling me a truth because they've lived it. So keep living in your heart.
When we're going to have to take a break for the Los Angeles Tribune, who gratefully is the proud producers of this show, and so I'm so pleased to do that. I also have to kind of give a disclaimer here that says, the opinions of my guests are the opinions of my guests that do not necessarily reflect that of the LA Tribune or the hosts or anything like that. But that said and done, we'll have a break in just a moment. But I want to come back on the other side, because what you've talked about that's so important is the power of one hypnosis, the fact that you swab the little girl's arms or your children's patient's arms, and their belief that it's going to be pain free and easy is done because you are helping them to have that understanding. So there's the power of hypnosis, there's placebo power, and the power of hope and expectations. Because what you talked about earlier,
I mean, it can just be confusion that cures. I mean, I had one woman, side effects of chemotherapy. She says to her daughter, get me my Compazine, I'm nauseated. Daughter brings a pill, hands it to her. A few hours later, I need another one. Daughter brings her a pill. What are you giving me? This is not Compazine. This is my anticoagulant, Coumadin. She said, Ma, because the mother had not had her glasses on, but she didn't know what her daughter gave her. Ma, there was a C on it, so I thought that was the Compazine. And look at the effect it had on her mother. She gets the wrong medication and feels fine. And let me just say that, yeah, I was considered controversial and my patients are considered crazy, but then they became fun to take care of. And the doctors literally called them, oh, that's one of Siegel's crazy patients. They had surgery and didn't hurt. They had radiation and no side effects. Chemotherapy, no side effects. And I did a lot of work with drawing. So if somebody drew the devil giving them poison, I knew I had to change their attitude and view. If somebody drew God as the source of chemo, I didn't worry. And I got to tell you one more story. My father-in-law was basically quadriplegic, and we had help caring for him in the house. And one of his nurse's aides said, I told my cousin to come up here that you cure people all the time. And I thought, oh my God, what are you doing? She said, she was told she'd be dead in 2 months and not to bother going for therapy. You'll only feel worse for 2 months. So I have her coming up here because you make people well all the time. That's what she told her. She showed up, had leukemia. I said, I don't treat leukemia. I'm a surgeon. I'll ask one of my oncology friends to see you. He took a look at her, called me, said, Bernie, I agree with her doctor. The type of chemo doesn't respond. I mean, the type of leukemia doesn't respond to chemo very well. I think she'll be dead in a couple of months. But I know you and your crazy patients, so I'll give her hope. And then he started sending me a note from his office every 2 weeks when she would come in for a visit. At the 6th week, his note said, "In complete remission, isn't chemotherapy wonderful?" I mean, that was his sense of humor. But these were doctors who had been very critical of me as a surgeon running a support group. You're not a psychiatrist. You'll make them feel worse. But when they saw what happened, boy, were they ready to step in and take care of these people. Oh, and another radiation therapist called me one day. "Bernie, I thought the machine was broken. This patient has no reaction at all. But then I saw your name in the chart, so I knew she was a crazy patient." So I said, "How come you have no reaction to radiation?" Her exact words, "Oh, I get out of the way and I let it go to my tumor." And that's what changed a lot of doctors.
Wow.
Awesome.
It is truly awesome. And we're going to come back after this word from the tribute, because that is really, really, truly powerful, Dr. Siegel and Bernie and Charlie. I appreciate that so much. So we'll take this moment for a commercial break, and we'll be right back. Everybody stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to the Los Angeles Tribune. Since 1886, our name has been a part of the world of journalism. We've earned a reputation for being a publication that practices integrity, authenticity, and responsibility. For general inquiries, contact today. Thank you on behalf of the Los Angeles Tribune team.
And we're back. You know, I want to ask this of both of you. Given what we've been talking about so far, and given your work for all these decades, and Charlie, your work as well with the books and with what you're doing with your granddad, there's hope or there's no hope, but there's no such thing as false hope.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's better to have people to hope, to be optimistic, to feel positive, or as you would say, laugh every 3 hours for no reason, and to believe that the treatment will be effective than to ever do otherwise.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll use like metaphors and stuff with my poetry, and like it's connected then with my nature photography work. So I like to think of it like say you didn't have hope at all, like then there's no ground to plant in. Like if you're going to use a metaphor of like a garden kind of thing, you got to have that some source of hope in some way, because then you have a chance to plant that seed, like the thing you're going to work on trying. And you know, maybe it won't grow, doesn't always grow and work, but you're giving it that chance. Then you got to give it that soil to begin with. So your hope matters that way.
Hope is not about statistics. So if one person in 100 recovers, you could be the one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just not about statistics. And yet doctors are killing people all the time by telling them what's going to happen. And then they go home more depressed. And that's the part that wears me out. I mean, and sometimes, see, people need to be listened to. I had one person who talked to me for 2 hours, and I didn't say a word because I didn't know what to say with all she was going through. At the end of 2 hours, she said, "That's the greatest conversation I've ever had with anyone." She heard herself. Another was a woman who came in for surgery, and her record, every few months, she was having some kind of crazy surgery. And I said to her, "I'm not going to operate on you. What are you doing? Punishing yourself? This doesn't make sense." And she looked at me like, "Oh, you're the first person who knows what I've been doing." So she said, "Okay, I'll do what you want. I'll come in and talk to you and straighten this out." What did the kick I get? Insurance company sends me a letter. "We do not pay surgeons for talking." I said, "Look at how much you've spent the last few months. You'll see the talking saved you a lot of money." And then they wrote back saying, "Okay, keep talking."
But
You're doing good for people.
and there was just a comment by Ava who said, "We don't get to have doctors like you these days, Dr. Brenny, because doctors are pressed for time." She also asked a question earlier. Says, "Dr. Brenny, what do you think is the key to your patient's beautiful, unusual experiences?" And I want to follow that up with a conversation earlier about telling stories and inviting people to share their stories, because if you tell a story, they feel like sharing their story. So there's no story that's too.
It's speaking about the truth, and the truth isn't statistical. There is survival behavior. So I'm teaching people. It's like being a coach, that you're coaching them to do the best they possibly can. Now, if they have the courage to step up and say, okay, I'll give it a shot. I'm going to try. Let's see what happens. They're not thinking about I'll be a failure if I don't live forever. It's about let me make an effort. But there are so many who are afraid because of how they're brought up. You always do everything wrong. You never get anything right. So they don't try. I mean, I send 100 letters to cancer patients saying, from my office, you want to live a longer, better life, come to a meeting. I told the secretary, you shouldn't have said that. People can bring friends and family now. What the hell am I going to do with hundreds of people? 12 women showed up. And my wife said, boy, they're exceptional women. So we became exceptional cancer patients. And they became my teachers.
I want to ask you a question about that, the ECAP, the exception. What is the value of attending a meeting? Because a lot of people go, well, I can get stuff online, I can read a book, or I can meditate on my own. But to join with others, would you both speak to that?
Well, there's a certain power in the room. Let's put it that way. And you're learning from others and getting support from them. It's like creating a second family. So you feel better when you leave. And we always would leave after guided imagery, visualizing yourself getting well and that type of thing. And they're teaching you, again, about how to deal with that failure feeling. And that's an enormous part that a lot of people need, but it's because this is what people would say to me. I don't have time to read a book. I'm not an artist, so I can't draw a picture of my treatments. No matter what you ask them to do, come to a meeting, answer some questions. No, I'm not good at that. I don't have time. They're afraid to try because if I don't get well, then I am a failure. Now, women with the same cancers as men live longer. And you meet many doctors who say, oh, it must be their hormones. No, it isn't their hormones. It's the hormones they're creating by their attitude. Because in my office, these quotes, I have 9 children. I can't die till they're all married and out of the house. 20 years later, when I thought she was cured by then, her last child died and her cancer came back. Her 9th kid, 20 years later. Now, a man is sitting in the office with his wife and 3 children. And he said to me, there's no point in living. I can't work anymore. I said, turn your head to the left. I think there are 4 good reasons. And it was like I hit him in the head with a mallet, that he could live for his family. That's why I'll take women anytime over men. Yeah.
Again, you both do this. You've been doing this as a medical practitioner for all these decades, and Charlie, in your writings and in your photography, the idea is to inspire, to help people live more fully, to be optimistic, and to develop an attitude. Is there a profile? And I hate to ask this question, I really do, but is there a profile of people who don't get well versus the profile of people who do? Because you're talking about some people who they believe their story, or they believe their problem, or they have they're kind of, I hate to say it, but they're married to their illness, as opposed to those people who recover or heal or or have a self-induced healing. So is
Yeah.
there a way of kind of bullet pointing the differences so that people who are watching might say, maybe I need to adopt some of these things, or because a lot of people don't realize what they do until it's pointed out, like what you just said about the guy, person getting, having to get hit and kind of hit in the head with it. We because we do what we do habitually, we're so close to it, we don't realize what we're doing. So
Yeah.
what say you?
I would look at it like the idea of like everything in life is a choice. Like you have free will for everything everywhere. So it's like the free will to like branch out and make a change, be the new you. I'm actually right beside a rubber tree plant that we have here in the back of the store that like you cut one of these and it grows a completely different direction. And it's like deciding that maybe that path you're on, even if like you said, like you've been close to it, you've been used to being this way, maybe that's not appropriate for the new life or role that you want to fulfill. So it's got to be like that plant that just whoop, I'm going this way now. And it's that like that power of choice to change. I think it's a lot of it is wrapped up in that. Like sometimes people can forget that they have that free will to like get up and do it a different way. And it can take that extra push sometimes to make that change, but that's like where you pull in like as many tools as you can to make that shift.
And let me say this, that there is survival behavior. I wrote articles, sent them to medical journals. They came back saying, interesting, but not appropriate to our journal. I sent them to psychiatry journals, came back. It's appropriate, but it isn't interesting. We know all this. You see, that's the sickness of medicine. I'll take care of your head. I'll take care of your body. You're not treated as a person. But there is, as I say, a survivor personality. So, and yeah, one of the psychiatrists, I forgot his name, when he was taking care of AIDS patients years ago, he noticed some of them do awfully well. So he started looking at their personalities. And he came up with immune competent personality. I don't know, like 7 or 8 things. Some of the simplest, you need help. Do you ask your family for favors if you need it? See? The answer is yes. You don't say, oh, I don't want to upset my family. I won't ask. The other side of the coin was, if somebody asks me for help, I can say no or yes. But if you're filled with guilt, 90% of nurses, when I talk at nursing conventions, I say, you're asked by a family or a friend to do something you do not want to do. What do you tell them? Oh, I will do it. Well, who are you going to get sick? What are you going to do to yourself if you're doing what you don't want to do all the time?
That's a powerful thing.
Things like saying yes or no, having an occupation you choose, not one imposed upon you by your family. Because that I've seen so many times when people quit what they're doing when they develop cancer and start doing what they wanted to do. Oh, as one lawyer said, while learning to think, I almost forgot how to feel. So he started living when he got cancer. And an oncologist from Sloan Kettering wrote a book called Healing Lessons. He sent me a copy. I didn't know him. It's arrived at my house. I thought, what's this doing here? And I'm going through it, and I come across, I wanted to apologize to Dr. Bernie Siegel. I thought, what the hell is that about? I don't even know him. So I called him up. I said, what are you apologizing for? He said, I'm apologizing for what I thought of you. Now that my wife has cancer, you're an enormous help. You're with us every night, listening to tapes, meditating and doing things. And see, that's how people change. Oh, Siegel's crazy. Yeah, I'm crazy until they need my help. Then they're not crazy anymore, and I'm not crazy. And we work together.
Were you going to say something, Shirley?
No, you're good.
I got to say something, and that is, and just absolutely come clean. You are a hero of mine and have been for all these, like almost 50 years. and Charlie, I'm getting to know you, and you too now. You're carrying on the
Thanks.
work and part of the work. But back in the late '70s, early '80s, I mean, when I started researching this stuff on the placebo and the power of attitude and optimism, you were at the forefront of that. When back in those days, there was like maybe a handful or 100 studies. Now there's like 45,000 studies.
Yeah.
On
They
the
were even arguing, remember the near-death experiences? Right. That was crazy. It's something in your brain. It can't really happen. Now we have a whole organization called IANS about near-death, stories.
Yeah,
and
we're doing a show with them in August.
Yeah. See, when I started this 50 years ago, I was crazy. I mean, it's hard for me not to keep holding this up because I get such a kick out of it. This is from New York Magazine, Dr. Love. And what does it say in this line up here?
Controversial.
It says, Bernie Siegel and his controversial theories of self-healing. Yeah, and boy, did they work hard to embarrass me with that article. How dumb and crazy I was. And I got a kick because my mother said, "Ooh, you're written up in a magazine." I said, "Ma, it's a terrible article." And she said, "Oh, no, it's lovely." And see, that's what love does. My mother reads it and thinks they wrote a wonderful article. I mean, it's not bad, but it's so critical. No matter what I say, I'm getting, criticized and confronted and everything else.
It's great to see how much it's come around now.
I asked medical students at one medical school, draw yourself working as a doctor. Only one student in the whole class put a patient in the picture.
Wow.
Desk, diploma on the wall. And I've written to medical schools. I said, when you get people to fill out an application, say, please include with the application a picture of yourself working as a doctor. It would really be interesting that if they didn't show a patient, you might say to them, how are you going to be a doctor? Yeah. You said, oh, I'm doing lab work. Okay, fine. We know you. We understand. But you've got to understand. And it's painful. I'm not saying it's easy to be a doctor. Yeah. I mean, my wife found my journal one night because I was writing in it to get the pain out of me. All the things I couldn't cure and fix, or even complications of your operation. You operate on somebody and they come out worse. I mean, it's like, oh my God. And my wife said, there's nothing funny in your journal. I said, my life isn't funny. And then she told me funny things that happened in the hospital that never got in my journal. And boy, did that help me. Because then I started remembering the good things too. And I'm still rereading that just to hold this book up. This is, I don't know how many years ago, 30 or 40 years ago. Yeah, well, look at this page, September 26th. How long do you have to learn to become enlightened? A lifetime? It's tiring and exciting. And I'm still reading this. And the other, I wrote a book called 365 Prescriptions for the Soul. And I'm still, I don't know how many years ago I wrote this, but every day there's another message. And today was getting to know you. The greatest of faults is to be conscious of none. And that's a quote at the top. Yeah. And then I'll write a page. And I'm still reading it. And it's decades ago I wrote it, but I'm still learning, to help myself every day, get my head in my brain in the right place to get through the day.
That's part of how I like how our poetry book came out too. We ended up doing 7 sections through here on all different life topics that, like he was saying, we emailed back and forth some of our poetry, and I was reading his, he was reading mine, but I was reading his like wait, did he put one of mine in his document? It's like some of them have the same titles. They're on the same subject,
That's
same
why I wrote it with
metaphors.
all the pain I was having.
Yeah.
So I write a poem,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Would you
it's
care
cool.
to?
Then go ahead.
Now we have this.
I was gonna say, would you care to read a poem when you're finished speaking? I don't want to interrupt you. You
Oh,
were
sure.
talking.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah, we
like to
can do
share a
that.
poem or two?
Um,
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we set it up so it alternates through it. And as I was going through our poetry, I found that those like amazing similarities, and it was easy to say like, well, this one lines up with this one. They're on the same topic. So you flip a page, you get to see the other person's perspective on the same thing. But we wrote these decades apart without knowing the other one was writing on the same topics. And then I put a couple of pictures to open and close each chapter. Going across the bottom at one point, there was my nature photo by sc.com. That's where I have all of my nature photography as like prints and merchandise like mugs and tote bags and all that kind of stuff. But I love just going out and like finding the most beautiful stuff I can out in nature and bringing that back for people where you can then like have it right there, connect with it, and it connects to the whole idea of like a oneness kind of message is part of my message with it. Like if you're seeing that beauty in nature, well, like we're part of that as being part of the earth, and then we're part of each other through that connection too. So I like having that message that way. Yeah, I can pick out something to read here for you. Here's one of my favorites. Some of my stuff is almost like a very short story, or like a little conversation between a couple of characters, and other stuff is more like a classical free verse kind of poem. This one is one that's like one of those miniature stories. It's called The Steps, and it's in our emotions chapter, I think. Yep, emotion. What are you doing? She asked him. Her voice rang out melodiously and sang with a sweet, palpable serenity. He built the rock wall higher, blocking out all light, all people, all things that could touch his heart. He built it to block out the past and returned her question with, "The past will never touch my heart." She watched his hands work. She heard his heart cry. She saw his efforts redoubled as his memories tried to fly. What if you built steps instead? She asked him. The question changed him. His hands halted their rapid work. You could use the past as stepping stones for your feet. No longer a wall will be needed, for you would use the past as a guide to help you forward. He heard this, and the wall came tumbling down. A change was made, and footprints were left upon the steps.
And let me give you a shorty from Charlie. They called her a mountain child and a hippie. They called her a hopeless dreamer and said she had plunged over the edge. She laughed and said she drove with the windows open so that God could comb her hair. Just that simple. And across the page from him, a part of mine, I'm usually out of my mind. There's nowhere else I'd rather come from or go to or be. And the end of that poem is, I struggle to find my way out of my mind and into my body so I can feel and find my way into my heart and my right mind. You see,
Wow.
and that's why, I'm writing that. He's talking about feelings. I mean, it's, you couldn't believe this wonderful email exchange.
Yeah.
It felt like I was writing to myself,
It was.
And, when I look at my age and his age, it's like, how did he get so smart so quickly? He's an incredible young man. I mean that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So we have about 10 minutes left, and I gotta say, I've enjoyed this so much. We got to have you back sometime, soon.
Yeah.
I would love to have you back, both of you. But in the remaining 10 minutes, we've been talking about hope and about life and living, because that is both of your messages, and the idea that people need to be able to feel life and live life and express life and share life and vibrate high and have the positive attitude and feel marvelous. I asked you before, you and I were speaking, and you told me the butterfly story, and about sharing a story that, because when you share your story, it invites other people to share their stories. But that was such a wonderful story. Would you care to share that story with our audience now, Dr. Rooney?
I thought I did.
No, you shared it with me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Um, what happened is years ago, one of my patients developed cancer, said she was going to the Hawaiian island of Kauai to die there because her mother lived there and she had never straightened out her relationship with her mother. And she didn't want to die without doing that. So off she went and died out there. A year after she died, my wife and I went to the island to give a lecture. We get off the plane, go into, I don't remember what kind of store it was, but it was very bright lights and everything. And there was a butterfly who was totally confused by all the lights going around. And we're always rescuing animals. Yeah, some of my books, read them. Okay. Love animals and miracles too, and more. We're always saving lives. So my wife puts her hand up and the butterfly flies over and lands on her hand. So we walk outside, you hold your hand up to let it go, and the butterfly sits on her shoulder and gets in the car. We get to the hotel, the butterfly goes into the hotel up to our room. And I mean, it was crazy. I realized it's hopeless to try to get rid of her. She's not going anywhere. But it was dinner time, and I said to my wife, honey, you can't have, well, it wasn't so much dinner. I said, we got to go have dinner and go to sleep. And you can't sleep with a butterfly. That's the name of the story. So get rid of it. She said, all right, I'll go out on the porch and brush it off. She did. Said, okay, look at your other shoulder. She brushed it off that shoulder, came back in on the other shoulder. I said, this has got to be my patient spirit. There's no other way you can explain this. So I said to it, here, I'll give you something to eat on the table, and we got to go to bed, and you stay here. We don't want to roll over in bed and crush you. Next morning, I said, we're going to a workshop. I'm taking you. I'm going to put you in a bag, not force you, but have you get into a bag. And then I'll open it at the workshop and talk about the symbolism of a butterfly as transformation from busting out of a cocoon, becoming the beautiful butterfly. And I hold up the bag in the kitchen of our hotel suite. The butterfly goes blink right in. And we go to the car, drive there. I'm up at the podium in front of all these people. It's an outdoor workshop in Hawaii. I open the bag, out comes the butterfly. And just keeps circling from 9 a.m. till 5 o'clock at night. When I finally announced we're done, the butterfly went up and away. Now, do I have photographs of my wife with the butterfly? Yeah. And then what was more mystical is that same type butterfly has appeared in our house with no way of explaining how it got in. I mean, the first time I heard noise against the window, it's like bang, bang, bang. I thought, who the hell's trying to get in the house? But when I went out of the bedroom, it was the butterfly in the house, knocking on the window, ready to go out. So I did what my wife did, reflexly. I just put my hand up, flew over, landed on my hand. And then I walked to the front door, opened it, put myself outside, and it left. And about a week ago, a dead butterfly, same type, was just lying on the ground outside our front door. I mean, it wasn't chewed up by a cat or something. It was just perfect shape, just lying there. And that was like, I looked at it and I thought, what's that there for? But then I realized that's that butterfly. It must be your wife who died 4.5 years ago, just brought it as a present for you. because the mystical aspects, we could have a whole show on that one. I mean, I haven't stopped communicating with my wife for the last 4 years. And I mean that well, let me tell you one thing, because this will make you smile and you'll believe it. My heart was broken when my wife died. I felt it. 9 months later, and she was born on 9/9, so everything comes out on nines, I go to the emergency room with an irregular heartbeat. I get to the front door, a man yells, "Put him in room 9." I thought, oh, my wife's here ahead of me already. Then they said, "We don't have a room for you in the hospital." That made no sense. You got this enormous hospital at Yale, and they can't find a bed for me. But the next day, I knew why. They put me in room 819, which adds up to 99. And I knew it was my wife picking a room for me. But then they put a wristband on me. My number at Yale, if I'm a patient at all anymore, is 8, which is a new beginning. That number has that symbolism in it. And then 996633. Everything added up to 9. And the doctors and nurses got tired of hearing me. Every time I go for a visit, look at this, so I stopped bothering them. But there are no coincidences. And as we said earlier, I don't know if we were on the show, but when mystical things happen to you, tell your friends and family. So when it happens to them, they'll be able to talk to you. I've had patients come in my office say, "You're not a normal doctor, so I brought a message to you from a dead patient." That was a mystic lady. And her family said, "That's exactly what he used to say at your meetings." When my wife died, within 48 hours, I got a call from my mystic friend. "Hi, Bernie, a lovely lady who was an opera singer called me, or got in touch with me, I should say, to tell me your wife's fine, she's back with the family, and everything's all right." Now, how could my mystic friend know my mother-in-law was a well-known opera singer? See, those are the things that teach me this is not crazy stuff. And I almost choked to death as a 4-year-old, so I've been there. I've been out of my body, and we're not our bodies. Just understand that. So get used to life and, try to participate and experience it and enjoy it. Is it easy? No. I hope you'll excuse this one from one of our kids. Life sucks. Most people suck. And if you wake up one day and the world is beautiful and everyone loves one another, you're dead. He was not having a good day. But, it is. You can't explain life. But what I can explain is your body is the gift to you, for you to use it. When it runs out, you leave it and you'll find a new one, believe me.
Awesome. Oh, you're muted, Rex.
I love it that you tell me I'm muted. I don't even notice those things. That was beautiful. That was very powerful, and thank you for sharing all of that, Dr. Bernie. And Charlie, what say you?
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's been great, and I always love doing this with my Grandpa Bernie and working together on all of this. I'm all about wanting to help and uplift people, and that's how I've grown up with my mom and Wisdom of the Ages and all the work that she's done. My grandparents on that side too taught spiritual development classes and meditation and everything. So my mom grew up that way, and so did I. My own kind of route with that is helping people connect with nature and the beauty of all of that. And I feel like there's just constant lessons in nature and what it can show us. So some of my poetry is kind of nature connected, but a lot of it's not. Also, a lot of the stuff, like I came out with my first novel back in 2017, just a short novel, but it's all about helping people go through grief, and that's something that I've seen a lot where people are coming seeking support in the spiritual kind of help in life. Is when they're going through grief is one of the hardest times. When I was looking at like, okay, I want to write and start putting my work out there. The first subject I wanted to do was to help with that, and I've gone through some myself, but like seeing that need, I wanted to give where I could. So my first novel is called Conversations with an Angel. That's at Wisdom of the Ages or like on Amazon and stuff also. But I write a lot of things like you'll see in that novel, and I'm writing a much larger novel right now. It's a fictional story, but it teaches real spiritual stuff through it. So it's helping people to see, like through the expressions and the experiences of that character, supportive ideals and messages and things for their own life, ways that they can find help. And I often have found it almost kind of happens as I start writing, that I'm writing in first person as if I'm that character going through those experiences, which are a fictional story. But I've found that, like, then for the reader, and for me writing it is pretty cool. Like, if you're reading it, it's like you're living it as that character, like a part of your head kind of sinks into that story in a deeper way, and you start to uncover things with that character and find those pieces of the story that can help you. Um, so that's like what I'm all about, is working on that kind of stuff, and glad to be on the show and get to help to bring that to people.
Charlie, I gotta interrupt, and you can't stop. You're not writing all that.
Yeah, it is like kind of coming to me in a way.
It's
Yeah,
coming from another source.
I find
that's
that
what
a
I
lot of
learned.
times it's
I talked about my angel. I did a
Mhm.
meditation at some retreat and workshop, and they said, you'll meet the inner guide. And I thought, oh, this crap. I came to learn something, not all this crazy stuff. But I met this fellow who was named George, and I was looking for Jesus or Moses or somebody, not George. But then I began to realize, like I'm talking to you now, George is doing it. And I wasn't in charge of what I was saying. And then people came up to me and said they saw him standing next to me. And the most classic was I spoke at a Christian funeral, and somebody came up, Al Warhol, the mystic and healer, came up to me afterwards and said, Bernie, are you Jewish? I said, what are you asking me for? I spoke at a Christian funeral? No, there's a rabbi standing next to you. And she described George in complete detail. And I can tell you, my first book, Love, Medicine, Miracles, I dictated it. George was talking. I sat for hours in front of a tape recorder and just never stopped talking. And then somebody typed it up. But I know why I can't stop, even I'm on a program, because if George wants to say something, he keeps going.
Well, I want to make sure that we leave room for George to say so long as well, not just the three of us here. But what I really appreciate about the time that we spent together, and the intersection between grandfather and grandson, is the idea that life is a mystery, life is meant
Yeah.
to be lived and enjoyed, and that we can all have an incredible life, and that attitude and optimism and hope and laughter is all part of that, and that you both continue to write, continue to work, continue to uplift and inspire people through a variety of means, through photography, through poetry, through novels or prose, through recounting, through the talks and through the shows. I mean, you're obviously very active and continuing to propose you know the stuff that you started so many decades ago. Yes, sir.
People love. That's what they need. You can reparent. This is something else I've learned. I got a phone call from a suicidal young woman who was being abused by her father, wanted me to give her Jack Kevorkian's phone number. I said, I love you. I'll be your new father. And since then, I have become a CD, which is a chosen dad. And so, or a BD, which is a bonus dad. And these people haven't committed suicide. They're alive today because someone said, I love you. And I'd say to all the listeners, become a chosen mother or a chosen father and give people a feeling that they're loved, and they'll stay alive because of you. And they start loving you, because I get more cards from my chosen children than the biological ones.
Wow. Well, with that, what a perfect way to close the show, really. And we'll have you back. I really want to make arrangements. So I'm gonna. You'll be going to the green room, and I'll close out the show. But wait for me so that we can officially say goodbye. But I would like to make arrangements to have you back because, as you said, there's so much we could talk about, in any given show. But what
Yeah.
a powerful way to end the show is to say love and to give love and to be a chosen dad or chosen mom for people. That's
Love is the answer, no matter what the question is.
Absolutely.
That's so beautiful. So with that, we'll say so long for now until the next time that the audience gets to see you on the air. But before you go, I want to write the audience. If you got something from this, if you'd enjoyed it as much as I have, or even more or less, share the show, leave comments. We won't be able to ask questions anymore during this show, but you can still comment. You can still share it with the people who are important to you or on social media or however you'd like to. But I think Dr. Siegel and Charlie have both a powerful, positive message that needs to get out there. And if you help us get that out there, you're spreading love at that point. So with
Another
that,
topic I might recommend, the use of drawings.
yeah,
If we come back again, I can bring some pictures to hold up to show you.
Cool.
absolutely. I love that idea, and we'll talk about it in just a second, because the power of the imagination, the power of love, the power of positive energy, all I love that. So yeah, well, let's do that.
Thank you. Thanks,
Oh,
everybody.
So we'll see you in just a moment. We'll be back I'll be back with you both in just a second. I am so pleased to have Dr. Bernie Siegel and grandson Charlie Siegel on the show today. And again, I hope you share it out wherever you can and however you can. I think it's important, and it's a must-watch event. He truly is a hero of mine, and the work that I've done now for 40 years. And one of the things I have to tell you about, obviously, is my book, Life on Your Terms, Create the Life That You Want. You can get it at Amazon. But when you get the book, I want to give you a bonus training valued at $497 called the Mastery Loop, because it's about mastering your thoughts, your feelings, your words, your actions, so that you can live the kind of life that you want to live and get the results that you want to get. So when you go to Amazon and you get your book, take your receipt code, go to the website that you see scrolling down below, pop that in, follow the instructions, pop it in a little special box there, and you'll have online access, absolutely no charge to you. The other way to sign, is for us to stay in touch, is to go to my website and get the newsletter as well. But also be sure to go to Dr. Bernie's site and to Charlie's site and to the Wisdom of the Ages.biz site that carries many of the things that they both do, that you can get signed copies there as well. So as I always say, if you consider everything a problem, it will be a problem. If you consider everything a blessing, it will be a blessing. So, you know how the show ends. I'll see you next time. Before we go, I should tell you my next guest is a favorite person of mine. Kimmy Robertson played Lucy, the receptionist in the Twin Peaks series, first, second, and third season, done 25 years later. She's going to be my guest next time. And after that, on the 14th of July, I have a very special guest. I'm not going to tell you who that is now, but you'll see that coming. We're going to have Dr. Bernie and Charlie back at some point. Not sure when yet, but we'll talk about that and bring you all of that. Lots of great guests. So while you're going through your days, have a fabulous weekend, a fabulous 4th of July holiday. If you're in the States or wherever you are, just do what I always say at the close of the show, and that is to celebrate everything. See you the next time.